Don't adjust your knobs. It's another week of breaking down security. I'm Brian Brake. Ms. Berlin, Mr. Boettcher are all here with me this week.
Yep.
Hey. Can you hear the train already?
Yeah, bingo.
Yeah, I wondered.
Yeah, mark that off the card. Bingo.
My windows are open. It's nice out finally.
Yeah, it's nice out here too, and I've got my window kind of cracked. I expect to see somebody with a 3-year-old with a power wheel walking down my sidewalk or driving down my sidewalk very slowly. So we'll see how it goes. Mr. Boettcher, as always, how are you, sir?
Doing good.
Excellent. So, for those of you who don't know, if you're new to listening to the show, welcome. Appreciate you joining in. Mr. Boettcher and another gentleman that we know, Michael Goff, do a podcast called Breaking Down Incident Response. And you had somebody on this month. Well, yeah, this month. It was has she ever been on our show?
I don't think she's ever been on our show.
Oh man, she hasn't been on Breaking Down Security.
Pancakes.
Yeah. So it's Miss Hacks for Pancakes. Yeah. We need to make that right.
So it's Leslie Carhart. Yeah. Send her an invite. I know she'd be glad to come on, and yeah, she was very good, very smart woman, and she does IR, and she's really skilled. She's got a lot of experience, and she knows her stuff, and she's really helpful to others in the security community, and by putting out content and helping people. She's got a black badge from DerbyCon because she's helped so many people through the years.
Right. That
Dave gave her a black badge, and she earned it.
Yep. Yeah, she did the resume. She was doing the resume review last year at Derby with Ms. Bat, who they did a phenomenal bang up job. So I would definitely love to have her on. Maybe talking about something other than incident response, because you guys spent almost 2 hours talking to her.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah, their shows are quite a bit longer than our shows because they only post once a month. So obviously, so how would people find that if they were looking to listen to Ms. Hacks?
Oh, geez. You can go to log-md.com and there's a link there on top for podcasts.
Right on.
So check us out. We have pretty extensive show notes, and our guest also edits the notes, so they can get a lot of input into some of their websites that they like, some resources that they recommend, and just go check it out.
Cool.
It was a good episode, and I'm honored to have her on, and she was very gracious, and she had a lot of good things to say.
Nice. Very nice. So how's your week been, Ms. Berlin? You've had a very interesting week. Not work related, obviously.
Yeah, I'm hobbling around on crutches and stuff.
I bet you'd like to Control Z this whole week and just kind of
I think
start
that would
over.
be fantastic.
Yeah.
I've made way too many trips to the ER, but I've always been pretty accident prone, like my entire life. So I'm not surprised.
Yeah, you were, you had your knee issue, and then you were doing some soldering today, and
I saw that.
Oh my goodness,
that was pretty funny though. It was pretty funny.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to see a good train wreck, go look at one of my tweets from what's today, the 6th.
Yeah, 6th of May.
I was. There's like I'm sure you guys have seen it. It's the stock photo of the lady with the safety glasses on, and she's holding the soldering iron on the iron.
Oh, right.
And touching it to a motherboard. And I had to do some soldering for my mom today. And I'm like, oh, I need to take a picture before we plug it in. And she didn't get it, so I had to explain the whole thing.
Okay.
And then put it on Twitter and a Facebook and things, and it just kept me entertained while I was not able to walk all day.
Yeah. Yeah, It's been a very interesting week. I've started my new job at my company.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure out how to balance the, place I work at notification, because I've been so long not telling people where I work. So,
you can't give up the mystery now. You just have to
keep going. So, but now you can disclose where you used to work.
No, I can't.
Oh.
No,
what?
No, I'm not going to disclose where I used to work. I'll disclose where I work at before I do that. So, yeah. So, yeah. Well,
I don't even know where you used to work. It's that big of a secret.
We talked about it before the show.
Oh, right.
Okay. Well, see, the threat model is different.
Wait, really?
Yeah, the threat model is different. Where I used to work, the bad guys were much more bad than it is at the new joint. So, yeah. So, if people ask, I'll tell you, I've posted some jobs. We're actually hiring like a ton of people. So if you go to our Slack, we have a job board, and I did post jobs to where I work at. So, if you're interested, we're looking for junior people. So, if you're looking to break into pen testing and you come from another background, like I came from vulnerability management, or you're a developer and you're looking to move into security, we are definitely hiring. So, feel free to, make the retooling effort at our company. So, yeah. So,
how much of the, what was it, like 3 months ago or something? We had the podcast on hopping. How to switch career paths or whatever.
Right.
How much of that was helpful? When we talked about it,
it was quite helpful. I mean, we talked about some of the pitfalls of it, where you might make less money, which is definitely the case of what's going on now. I am making a little bit less money, but I definitely have found where I can bring my current expertise into my new role of doing more project management. Some of the reports and the reporting that we do, I was looking at some of our deliverables this week, and I was asking questions about, why is this vulnerability a high when, the CVSS score on it is 3.7, and I'm asking these questions, and I'm, helping them triage some of the vulnerabilities and helping them understand that. And you could tell that they were, genuinely interested in my feedback and why I was saying the things that I was saying, coming from a customer or client point of view, where, this is an engagement document coming from a company. So I was like, if I'm a customer and I see, I don't know, what was one of the ones, it was XST or whatever, which was track and trace on Apache for one of our customers. And, it was a medium on the report. And I'm like, well, why is that an issue? And they're like, well, it's information disclosure. And I'm like, yeah, but, where, when we finally got down to it, it was where the system was located, what information could be disclosed by that, and they're saying it was a real simple win to fix anyway, so there wasn't any real reason for them to downgrade it. They were just going to tell them, and they were going to fix it, because it's a real simple change in your HTTP con file to remove that ability from or remove that vulnerability. So, we're working on, triaging things and, finding vulnerabilities, definitely not using a lot of automated tools like, I thought we would use. It's a lot of manual testing, which was quite interesting. They don't worry about popping shells, because they're like, we don't have to pop a shell. We just tell them that it's there, and, they should fix it. So, we help them understand the merits of that vulnerability. So, anyway, so, we've got some things we want to talk about, of course. We were, talking about, let's go down to the Netflix one with the data classifications. So, I found an article about data classification, and they were talking about this guy, Russell Smith, and he posted it on 1 May of this year, 2018. And he was talking about data classifications and, entering assets into a CMDB or an asset register in this case, or classifying what assets were there. And, he's talking about there's 5 reasons to ditch the manual classification methods. And we were talking before the show, and I don't know Miss Amanda, Mr. Berlin, do you manually add anything to a CMDB anymore?
Not a CMDB, but I do use a lot of Excel.
Okay. So, I mean, yeah, the vast majority is, if we're not using, Excel, we're using some other type of documenting system, that...
I wish more people would do it automatically. Like I've seen a couple do it really, really correctly where they always know when there's something on the network.
Right.
New Mac shows up and boom, like either somebody gets alerted because one, it can't connect because they have all the things in place that make it not be able to connect. Mm-hmm. And all of that's already built into their management of it.
Right.
Or everywhere else where you can just like YOLO, connect, plug in. Nobody's going to know until something stops working.
Yeah. Yeah. Mr. Boettcher, do you guys, does your IT department or do you do any kind of asset management or, keeping track of what's going on?
It's kind of a disparaging system.
Right.
Where this group has this, that group has another thing. Security team has theirs that they're trying to update. And usually the security team has a scanner, right? Like a vulnerability scanner, and that's their system of record. And they keep scanning and seeing if anything's on the network.
Right.
In that way. Of course, there's Active Directory, and you can query that. Mm-hmm. You get a list of assets that can actually log into the network if you have Active Directory. So yeah, there's a lot of things that we have, but there's no system of record other than probably Active Directory.
Right.
But I'm confused. Data classification doesn't necessarily have to be some sort of a physical asset. It can be like a document, right? So if Sally creates some sort of a document for customer X, that could be classified as private or whatnot. And it needs to be classified in such a way where it, if someone does publish it on, say, the company website, which is public, then they could be reprimanded or whatnot because that document had a proper classification, right?
Right. Yeah, my whole thing about, the data classification and the asset management is, just more generically, where is your information located? And it kind of dovetails into the discussion we had at our last CSEC East meeting with GDPR. A lot of organizations, even in this day and age, they don't know where all their data is located, or it's located in 8 different places when in fact it should be located in less or even 1 or 2 locations. You shouldn't be putting your, payroll documents in the same file server as where you're putting production information, So, I mean, this guy, he said there are 4 steps in the process. So you enter the assets such as email or electronic documents in an asset register, classifying each asset accordingly to its sensitivity. And that, that could be, for official use only, or, if you're using military classifications, could be confidential, secret, top secret, for your official use only, your eyes only, that kind of stuff. Labeling an asset based on how it's classified, and handling the asset based on its classification. So, for example, email could be classified as confidential, or you may have even, separate file servers based on the types of data that is being, handled. Like I said, production data versus HR data may be on separate file servers. I think the big issue is that there's still a lot of companies out there that don't know where their data is all located. And when it comes time, like say in a data breach, the first thing they say is no customer data has been accessed. And then 2 days later, some customer data may have been accessed. And then a week later,
because they released that statement, and all these people are like, well, you didn't know about this thing I was doing over here.
The backups are
in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The backups were actually stored over there as well. So
it's correction. All data has been.
every byte and
actually,
bit.
you know what? We can't really prove what has and hasn't been accessed at this point.
Yeah.
Or can we ever? So.
In the article, they don't mention an expiration date, which I think is very important.
Oh, yeah.
You can't keep all data forever. The cost can be overwhelming. You have to expire, delete, things like that. There has to be an expiration for email.
Right.
You can't keep everybody's email forever. It does have a classification, right?
Right.
Some people want you to keep their email forever.
Yeah. Well,
and depending on where they are in the company, you have to listen to them.
Some of the lawyers I've talked to said that they don't want people keeping email beyond like 90 days because e-discovery purposes, like if you get sued, they can subpoena your entire email archive from multiple systems. So
I'm not going to tell you what I've done with my email.
Do you print it out and keep it in a file folder next to you?
No, but up until I moved to Gmail, like I had a PST for every year.
Oh,
so I have an Outlook PST back to 2005.
I did that at my previous company and the one before that company because I was like, how am I going to remember things like where I bought that license from or whatever?
And it saved my ass so many times to keep that email.
And it's like, I don't remember who my point of contact is at that company. Oh, I'll just go look at my email. And it's like, oh, we're only going to allow you to save 90 days worth. And I'm like, what? How, and you just put that information in a wiki. Oh, so I get to put really sensitive information inside of a wiki that's company wide. Great. That's awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
And plus you need to have a, I guess the official copy,
right? And
then the unofficial copies, like they have to be deleted once they're used, and they have to be marked copy.
Yep.
Whereas the original is marked original, so you don't copy the original and call it an original.
Right.
And the copies have a very short expiration date, whereas the original may have, say, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is. But it does expire at some point.
Right. Yeah. There are various levels of classification. So it almost runs like a CVSS score. So, your asset's going to be, a low, medium, or high classification depending on the data that's installed on there. But its importance to the company is also weighs into its level of classification. So if it's an email server, for instance, it's got company data on it. It's got sales leads. It's got contact information. There's a dog. Mark that one on your bingo card. And then, of course, it's got a lot of other sensitive information in it. So an email server would be considered high, whereas a file server where you got, where people are putting information about, non-company events or something like that may not be nearly as high. But because it has access to all of the networks, because all of the people can get to it, it may still be considered high because of where it sits in the network. So it's...
You know anybody that does classification automatically?
I don't know of anything.
Like, I know Discovery is nice to have done automatically. Unscripted or with software or whatever. But as far as classification goes, it could be like subjective, but
what I would love to do or see is maybe something OS level where when you create something, it would allow you when you're saving it to set a level of classification. And if
I think there is things out there like that. I think maybe the Symantec thing does that maybe.
I didn't know that. I didn't know. Oh, I know. So the classification kind of butts up to role-based because if you don't have a certain classification, you wouldn't be able to access that data. Versus if you're an admin, that means you have access to more sensitive information. So, I mean, it kind of runs hand in hand where classification.
And it all rolls into like DLP stuff.
Right. And that roll, yeah.
Because you have to have all this done. Like, so many people want to roll out DLP and not get classified or find their data, which is just, it's not how any of this works.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the DLP thing. You have to have data classifications for DLP to work efficiently, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I can't think of it working any other way.
Well, I would just have it grep for social security numbers and PCI data, right? And then I'm good. I mean, I'm sorry. Yeah. DLP doesn't just grep things. Sorry, DLP people. But, so, I mean...
Yeah, so like if you want a DLP for GDPR, like it just has to look for funny names.
Oh my God. You did not. Look, I apologize to all of our European listeners. Please send your hate to Amanda. No, wait. Never mind. I can't divulge that information either.
It's easy enough to find.
Just send your hate mail to bds.podcast@gmail.com and I'll forward it on to her.
He'll forward it on to her.
Yeah.
That's great.
But okay, so how granular does the sensitivity of information have to be when you're using a DLP solution? Since we're
on a company.
It's what?
Depends on the company.
Well, okay. So let's say you have, so at minimum, you have to have 2 layers of sensitivity. You have to have important or not important. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, well, it's important to outside customers, but not internal customers. So that'd be like the
public and private, right?
Public and private. So public and private, and then not important. So you have a minimum of 2, then it starts to get 3, and then you have like, well, okay, you can share this with vendors, but not customers, or you can share this with shareholders, but not vendors or customers. I mean, I guess it really depends on what your status is as a company as well. So it's very complicated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. Yeah, you can have things like personal information.
Right.
Treat this as, say, a social security number, things like that.
Right.
And then you can have secret information, which is company confidential, things like that. Mm-hmm. And then you can have public.
Right.
So there could be 3 categories like that. You can get more granular, but I think that's the gist of it.
Well, like, let's say you've been breached and one of the requirements is you have to notify your customers. You definitely don't want to hit reply all and send it to media organizations. I would imagine that would be, there would be some kind of process in there if you were ever breached to go, okay, we need to control our communication because were that to leak, that would be very bad. So, I found something interesting in the article. So his reason number 2 that, people are, the data classification is hard is because they say users don't see any value in doing it.
I can see that.
Now, why is that? Is it because, and we've talked about this on the show before, that people don't actually understand the value of the data that they're maintaining? Mm-hmm. So if they don't put any importance on that, how can you, have a classification system?
That's why it's supposed to be automated.
Well, I mean, how does the automation know how to do it? I mean, somebody's going to have to go through that. You either have to
you just don't rely on the end users to do it.
Okay, but what? Okay, let's say if the end user is creating the report and he's like, well, I just want to give this to everybody. Obviously, he's not going to be doing that. So the end user has to have some kind of chop in what, where that document is going to go. Well, we don't want to give this to management just yet. Okay, well, we know we can't necessarily give it to management, or, well, we don't want to give this to our customer. It could be damaging to our reputation. Is there, do you hire a data privacy officer to be, in a data privacy division to, go through that stuff on a regular basis? Or is that just how IT end up lumped into a bunch of, wearing a bunch of hats?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a hotline. It just goes to the same place that everything else goes.
Oh, yeah. Please hold. Your call is very important to us. You've reached the data breach hotline. Yeah. So, yeah, it just seems like, classifying data, and especially like, we were going back to GDPR that, at CSEC East, we had a discussion about how GDPR is going to affect everybody. And it's, you're sitting there going, wow, my company is not affected by that. And I know some of you are. I see you over there. You in traffic. Yep, you. We learned that if you're a U.S. company and hospital was used as the example in the talk, but let's say you run a hospital and you're an American hospital and everybody at your office and your company are U.S. American citizens, no Canadian, no Mexican nationals, no nobody from non-U.S. All of a sudden, a guy from the Netherlands comes in with a broken leg, and you have to take his name, address, phone number, all that information. You are now subject to GDPR restrictions.
Which is crazy.
Can't you have a disclaimer like sign here to waive your GDPR?
You can't waive a right. You can't waive this particular right. It's the person can't waive that right. And
really,
it's.
I was at HEB yesterday and looking at the chicken. Right. And they had deboned chicken, like strips or whatever. Mm-hmm. But the package says may contains bones. So aside from the grammatical mistake, I guess they kind of covered their butts by saying, well, if we have this employee who really doesn't give a crap and they give you a bone or whatever, you can't like choke on it, die, and then sue us. Something like that.
You're trying to get out of liability there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
so I'm wondering if hospitals in this case would have some sort of a disclaimer in the 15 pages of paperwork you got to go through and initial and sign and everything.
Well, I mean, what's the person from the Netherlands going to do? Well, my leg is broken, but I don't want you to treat me because you won't safely store my data. Okay, well, the hospital's just going to be like, well, okay, well, we're just going to dump your ass off outside and then you can, fend for yourself. It's not going to happen. It's not realistic.
No, yeah, but I think with what Boettcher's point to like put in there, we acknowledge that we're not GDPR compliant. Do you still want your leg fixed here?
Still want to live.
Yeah.
I could see that. I could also see that maybe that hospitals or some organizations will have to build separate data pipelines or separate data systems that will handle just EU data and then, have the ability and process to scrub that data. Or, we're going to hold your data for a week. HIPAA requires a certain amount of time for, regular patients. If you're a minor, they have to technically hold it until you're, if you're a HIPAA fan out there, I think it's the 18th birthday for minors, but I could be wrong.
I don't remember.
But, I'm seeing separate pipelines and separate data classifications where we're going back to, where it's like, okay, if you're an EU person, you're going to be in this silo of data. If you're a non-EU person, you're going to be in this silo of data. For companies that are having to deal with this, and I've seen a couple of things out there where some companies are just like, yeah, we're not going to do business with the EU anymore.
Yeah, but didn't you say, like, even if they silo the data, you can go and say, oh, I want to move to France, and now I'm a French citizen, and I now want all my previous stuff deleted.
Yes, that's one of the issues with GDPR. That if we talked about this before the show, if Miss Berlin decides to hang it up here in the U.S. and immigrate to France and become a French citizen, you're trying. Well. No chateaus in your price range? Is that what you're trying to say?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So the idea is everything's retroactive. So if she moves to France and, all of a sudden, she wants to.
This is a good bingo episode.
Yeah, it is.
Now
a really
we have
good,
a cat, dog, train.
Train, yeah.
I just need to drop the F-bomb.
Don't do that, please. Everything's retroactive to the date, to the day she's born. So if she decides she doesn't want to be in any U.S. databases anymore, she can actually exercise her newly given right of, right to be forgotten. And I think that's what scares a lot of the companies because they know they don't have any possible way of locating all of that data and scrubbing it properly. Mm-hmm. Which leads us back to the data classification, data storage, asset management, asset storage. A lot of companies are wigging out on this because the penalties are fairly strict and fairly substantial. I do believe there is a clause in there about, it's going to cost far too much money or effort to do, and they can't invoke that, but I think they have to prove that in a court of law. We got into fairly heated conversation over the GDPR stuff at our CSEC East. A lot of expletives were being thrown around. Well, what if we just don't decide to, follow along with that? Well, you can be sued in European court. Well, we'll just not show up for court. And the lady she said, well, that is your company's prerogative, but if you ever want to do business in the EU, you're going to have to pay those fines plus probably interest to, fix it. So, there are companies out there that are no longer catering to EU citizens, oddly enough, and it's, I think, only hurt them in the long run. So, does it have to be hard to classify data, though? I mean, obviously, you can't just put it you can't say, well, okay, I'm going to create, job.doc and put a classification on it. Where do you store the classification? Is it in the metadata? Is it in the metadata? Is it in your DLP solution? Is it in a CMDB somewhere? I mean,
I imagine it'd be easiest to do in DLP.
I thought it would be easier to put it in metadata, because then, you could do searches for data that's classified X.
Right.
Yep, and it'll follow the document.
Yeah, and it would follow the document, any changes that were created, especially if it's a Word document or what have you.
I wonder if any of the DLP things store it there.
I don't know.
Do both.
You would think the DLP solutions would look at metadata, at least to make sure that other data is not being leaked, like author or, date or location or what have you. So, let me see here. He says reason 3, data isn't static. Files are usually classified at the time of creation, but data changes all the time. Okay. All right. So that does make sense. You can originally create, job.doc, give it a specific classification, but once you change the contents inside the document, the classification might change. It might actually get tighter, might actually get less tight.
Right.
Get out your Bell LaPadula models, kids, if you're, CISPs or anything. It is going to be supremely rough to handle information handling, because, classification also decides who, the roles of which, who will touch that data. So it all is kind of connected. So, some strategies that can help mitigate these challenges. So I will say that this came from a blog company called Netrix. Networks. Netrix, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I've actually used them.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Before we had a SIM at the one place, we used it to alert on like Active Directory group changes and like some SQL and file changes and stuff like that.
Right. They suggest classifying entire folders instead of individual documents to save time if you have lots of data, and to simplify your classification scheme. Yeah, I guess less is more in this case. I mean, you don't want to go, secure or non-secure or public or private, but maybe limiting it to less than 5 different classifications might make it a little easier to do. And yeah, if you shotgun it by classifying entire folders, that might save you a lot of time and effort. Of course, it's one of those things, like if you label that folder as something specific and then you go and put something in there that isn't, you might set off your DLP with false alarms if you're putting cat joke GIFs, accidentally saving them into the super secret document folders.
Right.
You're going to light off your DLP if somebody loads something in there. So, Yeah, so that was quite interesting. Yeah, so the CSEC East local meetup that I organize, we've started doing regular talks, and the GDPR thing was very interesting because it was day 2 of I want to say it was day 2. I want to say it started maybe on on April 25th, but I believe May 1st was like the cutoff date where you don't get any more freebies, and the fines are being handed down. But a lot of the people and issues that I heard during that talk was they were worried about the right to be forgotten stuff, and it's not only right to be forgotten. It's if, let's say, your data is wrong in a database, they can petition you to update and fix that information. In addition to being forgotten. So yeah, there's going to be a bunch of new processes that have to be added to update. It's called CRUD. I looked it up earlier. So it's create, read, update, and delete. So it's like most database functions. You have CRUD, so you can modify that data as well. So. But yeah, I think a lot of people are just worried about the fines involved because there appears to be some teeth to it, much like the new HIPAA. Well, it's not new, but the HIPAA audits that the Office of Civil Rights is doing, where they're actually fining companies and organizations for loss of data or data breaches. So yeah. Mr. Boettcher, do you deal with a lot of DLP stuff, or How do you get away with, how do you do your data classifications at your office? You must deal with some fairly secret stuff. I mean, with malware infections or disclosing these things to vendors.
Well, we have like a process of how to handle things like malware when we find them. But as far as DLP, that's not my bag. That gets handed over to other individuals, like on the compliance side.
Right.
They're handling that a lot more than the technical folks on the security side. But
you have a data classification system yourself, right? You're not emailing everybody in the company the results of a malware infection, right?
Right.
So do you
I don't know. Tell you the truth. I've tried to stay away from DLP as much as I can because security is so broad now. If you get caught in the weeds in one thing, you're gonna, at least in my experience, you're not going to be as good as your core,
right?
At your core thing, right? So whenever I hear DLP, I'm like, okay, others can handle that. Let me focus on what I'm good at.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So that's why I don't have much to say on DLP.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's important to, protect that data. So, but yeah, I completely understand. I can't, I was in the military, so, we dealt with classification of information all the time. So, I don't see any reason why it can't be done in normal environments. Of course, like most people who, use or in the government, they believe that there's a lot of, They put things in a higher classification just to be safe, because you can't read a 500-page document and point out what part is secret, and it's one of those things where if even one part is secret, the whole thing is secret. So they always try to make it as high as possible. So that's why there's a ton of secure data around. So that's why it's important to look at your not hold all that data like we were talking about. Make sure you're purging your data on a regular basis and doing it in a secure manner. You don't want to hold all of your PST data, for years and years, because lawyers like petitioning that stuff for e-discovery purposes. And it becomes kind of a bear to store, and it's a costly thing too. So, the bigger your backups are, the more storage you're going to need. And if you're doing cloud backups, that could run into several $1,000s every month. So, wow. Okay. Well, I had expected to go through three links here, but I think we went stupid on the data classification methods. So I'm kind of cool with that. Anybody have any other thoughts about data classifications or handling of the datas?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
I wouldn't want it for a job.
Oh God. So yeah, one of the other things they were talking about, and I talked about data privacy officers, is the GDPR folks say that you have to have data privacy officers. And whether or not there's an actual legitimate job title for that, or if you're just like, okay, I'm an IT guy and the data privacy officer.
Right.
Yeah. And yeah, there's a whole rigmarole separation of duties for that. And it's like, yeah, it's crazy. So, I've actually, Ms. Lockwood, who's on our Slack, Bar Lockwood was our speaker, but she also brought a gentleman along with that, worked for a marketing company. And he was talking about some of the pitfalls of being a marketing company with GDPR issues. Because it's like there's so much information that GDPR says is personally identifying, IP address, any kind of, ethnic information or sociological or psychological or anything that can identify the person. It's even more granular in many cases than HIPAA is. And it can, you need to be careful on how you're storing that stuff. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. I want to reach out to him and see if we can't have him come on in a future show. I mean, it's going to be too late if you're already a US company or an EU company and, you're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. You should have already been saying that like 5 months ago. So, yeah. So, all right, well, let's move along to the end game here. DerbyCon tickets, if you got some, woohoo. I got some. Did Miss Berlin get some?
I got some. Right.
Mr. Boettcher, you must have gotten some too, right?
Well.
I'm going to point and laugh at you.
No, and you can't have any of ours.
That's right.
No. They're all ours.
Oh God, I'm so sorry, sir. I know your internet sucks, and it just happened that you refreshed at the wrong time or something. But yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I don't win those lotteries usually. Shmoo, I tried twice, nothing. Derby, nothing.
So,
but I'll still go.
Yeah, you get a little help from your friends. Yeah. But yep. So Shmoo is another one of those where the LobbyCon is probably just as good as going to the thing, right? That's what I've heard. Ms. Berlin, you're the only one here's ShmooCon. It had a LobbyCon that's comparable to the conference itself. So if you don't get a ticket to ShmooCon,
yeah, definitely.
You should definitely still go, because there's always people the day of going like, I can't use this ticket for whatever reason, who wants it, that kind of thing. DerbyCon's the same way. If you haven't got a ticket, don't worry about it.
I heard LobbyCon's going to be even better than normal this year.
Yeah, there's going to be more people. It's a bigger venue. There's tons of hotel rooms. The hotel room blocks are not open yet, but I would suggest not waiting until the hotel room blocks are open, because I'm thinking it's going to go quick.
I'm really, really, really hoping my workshop gets picked, because if it does, I have a lot of really good ideas.
Your blue team attack workshop?
No, I'm doing one, just a mental health workshop.
Oh, okay. Very nice. All right. Yep. When do you find out about that?
I have no idea.
Oh. Well, maybe you should call up Mr. Kennedy and find out. So.
Well, it's I got it up here. Let's see. Closes July 1st. So there you go.
Wow. So you've got a few more months.
Yeah, I know.
You've already submitted it, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So you're just doing all kinds of stuff, Miss Berlin. You're going to be keynoting on Thursday, which is the 10th or 11th?
That's a great question.
The 10th.
Yeah, the 10th.
Thursday.
Yeah.
Thursday, May 10th. If you don't have tickets to Converge Detroit, you probably should get some now so you can go see Miss Berlin keynote.
Yeah, Converge is Thursday, Friday, and I think BDIR Detroit Saturday.
Okay.
I think I got that right, but I'll be there.
You're going to be at both of them?
Yeah, I'll be there Thursday, Friday.
Cool. Very cool.
And then after that, I go to NOLACon, which is in 2 weeks.
NOLACon is in New Orleans.
Which I've never been before, and I'm super happy to go.
Oh, yeah.
I really should finish that talk.
Their airport. Oh, wow. Yes, you probably should. Yeah, their airport, I've been through there once, was very interesting. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, to get back to the DerbyCon tickets, I did get 3 tickets. So I have at least a ticket for myself, and we also have a ticket for our DerbyCon CTF. So if you're a listener to BreakSec, this is our 3rd annual, I believe, CTF, and we will have a charity auction. What I'm hoping to do is maybe to get a press pass as well, so I'll have a 3rd ticket to give away as auction, but we will donate 100% of whatever happens in the auction to a charity, probably like I Am Not 22, which helps U.S. veterans. It's a suicide prevention program. Joe Gray turned us on to it last year, so we donated, I don't know, roughly $3,000 to that, because we have somebody who can do a 4-to-1 match on our auction. So anybody who wins will try to get that matched 4-to-1, so that'll be good. But yeah, we'll have a CTF. We're actually going to try to do a real CTF this year. We're going to talk to Mr. Domko at #Cyber to work with Mr. Boettcher and Ms. Berlin and myself on making a proper CTF.
It gets better every year.
I hope so. Last year was awesome with the OSINT that Miss Berlin did, and it
was fun.
Yeah, the ones that I did wasn't very good because people cracked those fairly quickly. But Mr. Boettcher had some good ones too. So, yeah, looking forward to doing the CTF. That'll be in a few months. We're not going to do this immediately because we're going to let some people who didn't get tickets try to find tickets on their own. And if not, we're going to give them a chance to do that. So it'll probably be July or, in mid-July, sometime around that time when we start working on the CTF. So, and the auction will probably be in September timeframe. So we got plenty of time to talk about it and plenty of time to work through those issues. So stay tuned. Same week, same podcast. So,
same podcast channel.
Yeah. Same bat time, same bat channel. So, Ms. Berlin, if people are interested in finding out what you're going to talk about at Converge Detroit or nolacon or B-Sides Detroit, how would they do that?
On Twitter at InfoSister, INFOSYSTIR, or on our very active Slack channel.
Yes. Or, if they want to send you, Mother's Day greetings, which are also at the same time as B-Sides Detroit.
Right.
So, yeah.
I need to get on that.
You're welcome. I went and got the obligatory.
My mom's actually going to come over and help me clean my house on Mother's Day because I can't.
Oh, that's nice.
That should be great.
That's nice. Mr. Boettcher, if people wanted to discuss LogMD or IMF security or logging or Windows or malware, how would they go about reaching you?
Yeah, they can hit me on the DM on Twitter, also the Slack channel under our Breaking Down Security Slack channel or log-md.com.
Awesome.
And I just want to mention that if you want to get more involved in security in your local area, there may be a security group there you just don't know about or haven't heard of yet. Like if you live in Nacogdoches, there's DeetSec.
Oh, yeah.
If you live in Kalamazoo, there's ZooSec. So do a little Googling and see if there is a security group or start one of your own. It's a great place to meet people like-minded. Also, if you are not looking to change jobs right now, but you might in the future, that would be an awesome place to get to know people who might need people of your caliber, say in the next year or two. Something may come up. Even 5 years down the road. If you need a job, don't start now for the job that you need now. Start now for the job you need 5 years from now.
Right. Yep. And some of my keynote that I'm going to do at B-Sides Springfield, Missouri is going to be talking about building community, networking, setting up, meetups and local meetups. So if you're interested in doing that, B-Sides Springfield, Missouri still has tickets. Link is in the show notes if you want to go there. It's a cool town. It's a fairly regional airport, so if you're flying in from like Dallas or something, it's only one hop. But it's my hometown. My mama's going to be there listening to me give the first talk of the day, so she's going to... I don't think she knows what's up yet. She knows I'm pretty decent with computers, but she, I don't think, understands the whole deal. So it's going to be a good Saturday in July 14th, I think, is when the B-Side Springfield, Missouri is. So if you want to come and say hey and hang out with 70 or 80 other people, they're almost sold out. So if you're wanting to get on that, those tickets are free, so you can't beat free. So All right. So the Slack, if you want to join our Slack, you can DM us on our Twitter at Brakesec, BRAKESEC, or you can email us at bds.podcast@gmail.com. You can follow me on Twitter. At Brian Brake, BRYAN, BRAKE. We're on Apple Podcast. We're also on iTunes. I don't know what the difference is between those, but I understand that if you are on Apple Podcast and using it there, by giving us a rating or something on there, we get more exposure, which also, opens up the podcast for more people. So if you're on that, please feel free to give some feedback on iTunes because, we love all of the people doing that. So we're also on Patreon. We have a Patreon. It's a tip jar. So if you find interest in information handling or any of the GDPR stuff, or any of our other 100 or 215 or 217 shows that we've got, a couple bucks helps us with hosting, helps us with equipment upgrades. Eventually we'll get cool enough that we'll actually be able to, start funding, people traveling to things maybe. So I don't know. We'll figure it out one day. But yeah, we appreciate everybody who does give money to our Patreon. And there's still a time if you want to get on Matt Miller's reverse engineering course. You can email bds.podcast and gmail.com and find out about how to join that. His first class for our reverse engineering starts up tomorrow night, which is Monday the 7th at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. So adjust your time zones accordingly. Got a good show coming up next week. We're going to have a guest, which will be very interesting. I don't want to jinx it, but I probably just did, so it's cool. All right. So, Miss Berlin, if I don't see you before we record next week, you will be available next week, right?
Yes.
Okay. Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.
And Mr. Boettcher, tell Mrs. Boettcher happy Mother's Day.
And your wife?
Yeah.
Oh, and my wife as well, because I love her a lot.
Yes.
She cooks for me and makes my lunches now for my new job. So.
Aww.
Yeah, I have to take my lunch now. It's a new thing. So, all right. Well, that was it for Breaking Down Security. Everyone have a great week. Happy Mother's Day to all you mothers out there. And be nice to one another. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.